Carrie Coon, you play Nora Durst on The Leftovers. You're currently in Austin shooting season 3, which has been happening, for a few weeks now, right?
That's true.
So I just think we should not worry about anything else, and let's just talk about season 3 and just tell me every single thing you possibly can. No one's watching, so it's okay.
Right. Yeah, I think I would lose my job if I said anything about season 3. I can tell you it's the last season and that the show is ending.
Okay, that's breaking news.
Good time for people to catch up on 1 and 2.
Yeah, good time to catch up.
Yeah,
but I guess without giving any spoilers away, okay, I don't want you to lose your job. We can't have The Leftovers without Nora Durst. Can you at least tell us that you're excited? You're excited to come back and see all of your cast and crew again. And
of course. In fact, I'm actually finished in Austin, so I had to say goodbye to everybody last week. And I have to say the crews in Texas are extraordinary. I got one bug bite and I complained. I'm still complaining about it. And they're out there all day long, and they're overheated, and they're all wearing hats and zinc oxide on their noses and white shirts, and they're just sweating and carrying a bunch of stuff around, and all I have to do is like sit there and not sweat, and sort of just get ready. And oh man, it's hard. I think they're so extraordinary, and I'm gonna miss them a lot. They are a really great bunch of people down there in Texas. I had a wonderful time. I'm gonna miss it. I hope I get to go back for vacation because I was working so much. I didn't get to enjoy the food or the lake this time. So, but yeah, I love our crew. I'll miss them. Australia,
Yes, that's right. That is coming. Although the announcement is not official yet, but
it's not official. So I can't speak to that. I don't know where we're going.
We have no idea what's happening. But
no one ever tells the actors anything. No.
Why do you don't need to be told. Look, you just we just find out.
Go up and memorize our lines. It's very easy.
Exactly. The other thing about you, Carrie, is that to date, you are the only cast member to have won a major piece of hardware for your work on this show, having won the Critics' Choice a few months ago.
I find that unfair.
I think that is insane. You all should have a trophy on your mantles by now. But given that, take us back to that night. That was a pretty cool thing to happen, right?
Wow, yes. I mean, my husband was there, which was a relief because I always feel better about those things when he's there because, in fact, no one ever recognizes me or knows who I am, including on the red carpet. So I'm always on the red carpet and people are going, "Who's that? Who is that?" And then they're like, "Mary, over here." And then they take one picture and then they're done, and it's kind of embarrassing actually. So those things are pretty torturous a lot of the time, though there are some lovely people I always encounter who love the show and are big fans and always have great questions. And so I guess what I'm saying is I wasn't expecting to win anything that night, and it was just it was kind of toward the end of the night when everybody's really drunk and they're not listening anymore too. So it was very surreal because it was very much like it didn't happen. And as soon as I got backstage, they sort of yanked the thing away from you because it's not the real thing, it doesn't have your name on it. And then they sort of yelled at me like, "Thank the people you forgot to thank in this camera." And so I kind of was taken aback, and they're like, "Go back to your seat." So I was back to my seat in about 2 minutes. So when I sat down, everyone was like, "Oh, you're back?" So it was very surreal. It sort of felt like I had a little daydream, and then it was over.
And it was over.
But I was sad. I think Justin in particular has been doing such extraordinary work. And episode 8 of season 2 was one of my favorites when I read it, and I couldn't wait to see it. And actually, Jovan Adipo and I watched it in LA together the night it aired, and I was just blown away by his work. And Ann Dowd, I just think is amazing. And we got Regina King, which was such a coup. And I just can't believe that. I mean, I'm so happy to be recognized, but man, I can't believe they weren't standing up there with me.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. And look, I suspect that if the TV Academy, for example, are actually now watching the show. Unfortunately, the show was overlooked for its first season, but this second season moved in a different direction, shifted course a little, and the critics really came on board for season 2.
They really did. I was so grateful.
Isn't that great? Like, how does it feel when you read reviews that are so overwhelmingly positive?
I wish, because we had, like you say, the first season had been rather overlooked, and so I didn't know if our second season would land in the world in a way that made much impact, or if it just sort of like, and this show's having a second season. Yeah. But to have the sort of think pieces coming out about the sort of philosophical underpinnings and I think very truthful examinations of emotion inside of a premise that's sort of supernatural. It gave me a lot of hope for my art in the world because I feel there's a lot of content right now. It's not all good.
No.
There are some extraordinary things happening on television, but it's really hard to separate, the wheat from the chaff these days. And I'm very, very proud of the show. I'm very proud to be a part of it, and I'm pretty snobby. I'm a real writing snob, and boy, I can't imagine. I hope I get to work with a cast that's this extraordinary, but I can't imagine circumstances where that's going to be true. I hope the universe proves me wrong, but boy, it's a high bar. And so to have people coming on in support of the show was really, I don't know, unexpected and great. And I hope it continues because I think Damon's being really brave. I think our writers are really brazen, and I love that.
Yeah. Look at International Assassin. That's episode 8 that you raised earlier. That was like, that shouldn't have worked on paper, right? It shouldn't have worked, but it really did.
But it really did. Like they had just enough of a nod to the tropes they were playing around with that, it subverted it. It sort of subverted that genre that they were kind of, I don't know, throwing Justin into. And I just thought it was really smart and interesting and just a lot to talk about and think about. And people are thinking about it. So I love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But going back to season 1, because it did have some highlights, and for you especially, when the episode Guest aired, people were really, I think that's when a lot of people clicked that this show is special, and that was an episode that really focused on Nora.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us back to that time when you read the script and saw the challenges of what you're about to do for that character?
I mean, at that point in my career, I had never been on camera that long, really. I mean, that's concentrated amount of time. I'd finished shooting Gone Girl. So I had that experience with Fincher. I had done a lot of takes, but movies move much more slowly than television. And so when you get to TV land, I mean, you got to get that thing done in the number of takes they give you, and then they're moving on whether you got it or not. So I knew that I had a tremendous amount of responsibility when I read that script. I kind of couldn't believe that they'd written it. It felt like I was making an independent film. Yeah. And I'd never worked with Carl Franklin. He proved to be a really wonderful, generous, supportive director, and very chill. He's just really laid back. He never puts any pressure on you. And so I feel as an actor, sometimes pressure is not the most helpful thing. I mean, I'm an athlete. I've had coaches who yell. I like coaches who yell, but Carl was just really kind of, I just always believed he thought I was going to get where I needed to go, which was very gratifying. But also I was really sick. I got super sick. So much so that I had to have an Apple box next to me so I could sit down in between takes. So it almost felt like I was in this delirious fever dream that whole 10 days. And I kind of can't believe it turned out okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember it very well. It was like a dream, especially humping that dummy. It was just, it looked just like Billy Magnuson while he was standing right in front of me. I mean, It felt like I was sleeping and had gone to a very strange place.
Yeah, and I expect that you would never have ever thought in your life that you'd be saying to people that you had a great episode where you humped a dummy. But, there you go. It's the leftovers. Things happen.
Yeah, all in a day's work. It's the most bizarre show. It's extraordinary. And the other thing I have to say is that the crew, again, our New York crew, one of the things about working on a show that everybody who's working on it is excited about and feels like something special is happening with, everybody's really focused. So when I had that scene with Holy Wayne, and I had to do that, I don't know how many times we did it, maybe 12, 16. The nature of catharsis is that you're having a catharsis, and then you have to put it back in and start over, which is totally counterintuitive and really hard to do. Not to toot my own horn about it at all. It's just, it requires a tremendous amount of focus and maybe a touch of masochism. So to have the crew be they were just all quiet and staying right there with us as we kind of just sort of stayed where we needed to be between takes. And that's so important when you're doing that kind of work. I can't be sitting joking around. I know actors who can do that. I think it's extraordinary. I mean, I watched Claire Danes on the set of Homeland because my husband was on it. And she can just be like, ha ha ha, like laughing, joking, and then suddenly she's crying. And I'm not that good at it. I'm not that adept, so I need to focus. And boy, they were great. They were just great.
The other highlight from season one for me, especially, and for others who follow the show, is for Nora, is the almost towards the end of the season when we got to go back and look at the how the sudden departure unfolded for many of them, and for Nora, it's so particularly heartbreaking because she turns around from the kitchen and they're gone. Her family are just gone, her kids and husband, and that imagery really stayed with me for a long time for some reason, and probably for many other viewers. What about you? You had to do it. How did it feel to do that kind of thing?
You know, it was interesting because, of course, the moment before that is she yells at her daughter.
Right.
And it made me think a lot about my last moments with people because you don't know when the last moment will be. So I remember being very conscious of that while we were shooting the episode. And also my little brother, I remember when he watched it, he texted me and said he was having PTSD because I used to babysit my little brothers all the time. And apparently I yelled a lot, like my mother. And so he said it made the hair on his arm stand up when I yelled at her because it was so familiar to him. So it made me rethink maybe some of my overreactions as a babysitter. But it was, I didn't get to spend a lot of time with those kids or with Sebastian, who played my husband. They weren't actually on set very much. So it's hard to build an imaginative life that includes those people long enough to lose them, or with enough depth that losing them is meaningful to you. But I have to say they were so delightful and charming, and we got to spend some of that episode together, and that was really important time as an actor to have with those people because you have to lose them, you know, and you have to connect to something in order to lose it. So it made me grateful for the time that I got, and it reminded me how luxurious, for example, a rehearsal process in a play is, where you get to spend all this time with people. You don't get that in television. So again, what it's done is made me respect television actors more. I mean, I don't feel like a television actor yet. They just have this skill set that I never really appreciated until I had to do it myself.
Yeah. Season two, as we discussed earlier, saw a shift in tone. So Damon and his writers really, now that they had finished Tom Perrotta's book for the first season, they wanted to move it into a more positive direction. How did you feel about that? What were your thoughts on how the show shifted course for season two?
Well, one of the things I loved about it is that anyone who's read Tom's novels knows that Tom is very funny, and that The Leftovers is quite satirical and has a great sense of humor. And I feel that in the first season, maybe because of the heaviness of the event, that we'd lost touch a little bit with that sense of humor, which I think was fine. That was the tone of our show. It was necessary. But I loved getting back to that in season two, mostly because I don't believe human beings deal with tragedy with one thread of emotion. And so I felt that the humor coming back in made it more complex and also more real. The responses are actually more realistic to me. I think we use humor a lot when we're in pain. And I love that we recovered that in season two. And also it was wacky. I mean, some of the moments, the kind of underscoring they would choose, like when Chris and Janelle are getting submerged in that drain pipe and they're playing that, I think it was a country song. It was just completely against tone. You know, when you read that in the script and you imagine the way it's going to go, it's just sort of heavy, serious, biblical moment. And then they underscore it with this wild, beat. And I loved those choices. I loved the boldness of those choices. And I think that's what made the season really stand out to people, was some of the juxtaposition that was so unexpected and so artful and provocative, I thought. I loved it.
And Nora is provocative in terms of who she is. She's a complicated person. For example, she shoots herself while wearing the bulletproof vest. That really took me aback, and I'm sure it did for you. I think you even referenced it in one of the interviews I've seen you do recently. But talk us through that. She is unusual, isn't she?
Yes, people are.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as an actress, we're not often asked to be unusual, which is a real shame because the people I know are pretty strange.
Yeah.
So to me, that's again, the thing that makes the show more real is the fact that we are not shy about extreme behavior. And it's not just behavior for the sake of being shocking. I feel that the choices they've made about the kind of things we do in the show are very much in keeping with our characters. So they feel integrated and whole, even when they feel strange. And I love being asked to confront in myself the possibility that I am capable of anything. And when I say anything, I mean anything sort of taboo or dark or strange or dangerous. And as an actor, it's a real privilege to be asked to consider that, because that's where the root of empathy is. It's It's the idea that anything you can think of, someone is doing it. That's a huge idea. And so for me, it was really exciting to sort of accept it, to accept the possibility that this was a behavior I might engage in was great. And I think that's important in the world, to have people consider that, I don't know, that there are behaviors we ought to try to understand before we judge them, and have compassion for whatever the roots of that thing are for someone. You know, it's that's what art is for. It's for teaching empathy, and I hope that our show is doing that.
Yeah, I think if The Leftovers isn't doing it, I don't know what else. You know, at the conclusion of season 2, Kevin's come home to his extended family, and finally it appears that he's at some kind of peace. You all seem to be at peace after 2 seasons of trauma and tragedy and so forth. What did you make of the way season 2 concluded?
Well, I thought firstly that it was a kind of conclusion that could stand if we didn't get a 3rd season. There was something satisfying about having them all together, and I think that was smart, preparing ourselves for the possibility we wouldn't get to come back. But I also think at the heart of the show is the idea of appreciating whatever is in front of you, and the reality of how much we take for granted, especially in a first world country. You know, we take a lot of our privileges for granted. And I think that it was deeply poignant to have those characters come to a place where they were just seeing what was right in front of them, and sort of thanking God for it in that very terrifying moment of the earthquake and everything that had happened. So, I mean, to me, that's sort of the most important idea. That's the most important thing I take away from the show when I see my family now, or think about my parents, or, you know, my siblings, or the people that I stand to lose in the world, which is a terrifying thing to think about. But the thing I'll give Damon credit for is taking the things about us that he's interested in and then turning them around and making us look at them. He is asking us to confront our deepest fears in some of those scenes over and over again. And that's not always the case with this kind of work. Sometimes it's very trite. And I just don't feel like the work is trite, and I don't feel the ending was trite. I felt it was had a lot of depth, and it was really beautiful. It was the only thing about that scene that was hard to do was the fact that I'm holding a candle under my face, you know, like sort of down here. And because of the way the DP was shooting it, I actually had to take the candle, and I'll hold my hands up so you can see. And as I stepped into frame and said, "You're home," I had to push the candle away from my face. So we always have to juxtapose very natural, you know, things, trying to be natural with really unnatural things that are better for camera. So that was the hardest thing about that. Well, it's so silly to be like, "You're home."
I'm going to be looking out for that. I'm going to rewatch that today, and I'm going to look out for the candle scene.
I hope you can't tell. I wouldn't be doing my job here.
You shouldn't be able to tell because, you know, it's just Carrie, thank you so much for your time today. We hope the Emmy voters take better notice of The Leftovers for season 2. You certainly deserve it.
Thank you. I'm so proud of the show, and I hope they're seeing everybody on it. I love them all. I think they're great. Thanks for taking the time.